To better understand why compulsions don't work in the long term and how they maintain anxiety over time, we need to understand the role of negative reinforcement. And so before we start, we have to understand the role of positive reinforcement to understand the role of negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is when you apply an appetitive stimulus, something one desires, following the completion or performance of a behavior. And so if you have an animal or pet at home, most likely a dog, it's common that we provide an appetitive stimulus, such as a treat, when they perform a behavior we desire or we command for them to do. And the reason we're able to train them to do what we want is through positive reinforcement. And so when you command a dog to sit and he complies and he sits, and you give it a treat or you give him a lot of verbal praise or you pat him on the head and you do all these things, those are all things the dog desires or wants. And when he gets them, he feels better. And so when you pair that, right, after he performs a behavior you've commanded him to do, he's more likely to do that in the future. And so the same is true for OCD, except instead of applying an appetitive stimulus, when you perform a compulsion, right, we take away an uncomfortable physical sensation, okay? And so negative reinforcement is when, following the completion or performance of behavior, you take away an uncomfortable physical sensation or an unwanted thought. And so if we go back to that example of germ contamination, when someone washes their hands after experiencing that thought of getting sick and harm coming to themselves, there's a great reduction in anxiety, which is a really uncomfortable experience to have. If you've ever felt anxious, which we all have, right? We usually want to do anything and everything we can to get rid of it, right? And so the myth here is, though, that we have to do something in order to get rid of anxiety or to ensure that our thought of worry isn't going to happen. And so anytime you perform a behavior or you escape an anxiety-provoking situation by avoiding it altogether or leaving the room, right, your mind remembers that. And it says, well, last time you did that, you felt better, right? Remember the cognitive behavioral model we just went over. And so that gets reinforced through this powerful reduction in an uncomfortable physical sensation that's taken away, right, or reduced following the performance of a behavior. And so that increases the likelihood of you performing that behavior over time. Now, the more you engage in any behavior and it results in a reduction or takes away an uncomfortable physical sensation, you're more likely to do it in the future.